Hey everybody, welcome to the Sound of Southern Charm podcast. I'm Stephen George, your host, and I just want to send a quick thank you out to everyone who started listening to the podcast and have hit subscribe. Today is the last chapter in the Mountaintop Moments series. Now, if you remember, I created the name Mountaintop Moments because I grew up a few minutes away from the Blue Ridge Parkway. And like the stunning view from there, this podcast series is going to take a positive look at the big picture messages from all my jobs to this point. Now, just because it's the end of the series doesn't mean it's the end of this podcast. Stick around at the end to find out what's coming up next in Season 2. Let's get rolling. All right, so when we left off on the last episode, I had walked out of the newsroom for the last time. But I had a lot to look forward to in front of me. Now was when I was going to get my time back with my kids. Because let's face it, working third shift and trying to raise a family isn't the easiest thing in the world to do. When I was at the TV station, I would work all night, get off around 9 or 10 in the morning, go home, eat some breakfast, go to bed, and then wake up just in time to go pick up my son from daycare. And I would get all of about 3 to 4 hours max with him before he went to bed. And that was every day for the first 2.5 years of his life. So when I got the chance to be a stay-at-home dad, I loved it. It's definitely something that's not meant for everybody. I was definitely trying to figure out what in the world to do with myself. Because as you've heard in the previous episodes, it wasn't uncommon for me to work 2 jobs at a time. So now my only job was taking care of my son. So I dove in headfirst trying to figure out what makes my son tick. And I figured out pretty quickly on top of his routine that he just needed to know what was coming. At 2.5 or 3 years old, he needed to know what was coming next in his life. Don't we all wish we could have that security? But seriously, it worked for him. He needed to know that he was going to have a snack, we were going to have an activity, we were going to eat lunch, then we were going to take a nap. And organizing his day and routine in that way really helped him have a lot more fun. That all changed though when his sister showed up. Routines got thrown out the window, just for a little while. And with her, I had the complete opposite opportunity than I had with my son, because I was taking care of her overnight when I used to be working when my son needed to be fed. Thankfully, third shift kind of prepared me for that job. The problem was, I would get up really easy to feed her overnight and then not go back to sleep. And then my son would wake up within an hour or two of that last feeding overnight, and guess what? Here comes the day. But as all you other parents know out there, it's just what you do, it's all a blur, and you forget most of it anyway. I loved having that time with my kids, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. I'm part of a pretty special club of stay-at-home dads, and I met some really cool people along the way. The plan, though, was that this wasn't going to last forever. I had in my head that once my daughter started kindergarten, I would go back to work, which would essentially put me out of the workforce for about 6 to 7 years. So what do you do in that time frame? Well, for me, I looked for opportunities to volunteer on occasion. Some of that was at my church in North Carolina. Because of my experience in the newsroom, I was able to sort of transition as a volunteer using my expertise in the audio-visual area. With a little divine intervention a few months later, I came on as a part-time staff member at that church. I worked at that church for almost a year when my wife decided to transition to a new job and it moved us to Georgia. I had been in North Carolina my entire life, so going to a new place where I didn't know anyone was going to be difficult. And I knew it wouldn't just be difficult for me, it would also be difficult for her and for our kids. So I helped them transition the best way that I knew how, by creating a routine. Thankfully, my son was starting school at the time. We literally moved to Georgia 5 days before he started kindergarten, so he didn't have a lot of time to be sad about not seeing any of his old friends. He's also smart as a whip and really enjoys going to school, because what do they provide there? A routine. It's the same schedule every day, and that really kind of helped him settle in. Once he started school, it was just me and my daughter every day at home, and she is nothing like her brother. She could care less if there's a schedule. She just needs to be on the go 24/7 until she can't go anymore. Do you know anybody like that? That's not me. So that was a tough transition to make too. Several years later, she's still that way. I have never met anyone that can go as much as she does, and she is a blast. We end up being in Georgia for about a full year before I start looking down the road a little bit. Because remember, my plan was to go back to work once my daughter started kindergarten. But now, living in a new state, I didn't have the connections that I had back in North Carolina, so I wasn't sure what I was going to do to make that happen. So I started trying to figure out what I could do with the skills that I already had, but I also had to be mindful of my schedule, because I still wanted to be available for my kids in case they needed me. Not to mention that the idea of commuting anywhere in the greater Atlanta area gave me great anxiety. So I had to spend some time looking at what my potential options could be. And that's when I came to the conclusion that I wanted to start my own business as a voice actor. Because by creating my own business, I would set my own schedule in a lot of ways. But as any entrepreneur knows, there comes a lot of risks in starting your own business. It's anything from having the finances to start it, where to find continuing work, how to get the training to continue to be successful in that business. And those are the 3 things just off the top of my head. There's plenty more out there. Ask anybody that's ever started a business. Starting a career in voice acting was sort of my continuation of the newsroom. It was the opportunity for me personally to tell someone else's story, whether that be through commercials or documentary work, or even online training models for different corporations. So I went online and got some training that would help me get started in the business. I did this for about 6 months before I officially filed for my LLC. Now at the time, I didn't know that that was my first mistake. I should have spent a lot more time training than I did. But it's one of those things, you don't know what you don't know until you get into it. And there's always opportunities to learn down the road in this business, which I have definitely done. There was definitely a big learning curve in starting my own business as a voice actor. And it mainly stemmed from marketing. How was anyone supposed to know that I even existed as a voice actor? So marketing myself has been a really big hurdle, especially when I don't even like talking about myself, he says with a smirk on his face as he's talking in a podcast. I didn't realize how long it would actually take to get my name out there, which, by the way, is still ongoing as long as you're in business. Within a few months of launching my voiceover business, I started looking for ways to meet other people in the industry, and I came across VO Atlanta. VO Atlanta is an annual conference held, you guessed it, in Atlanta, where people from all over the world come together and learn more about the industry, what's going on, what are the trends, and just have a great time socializing with each other. Anyone who's attended that conference knows it's like a big family reunion every year. And because of my self-proclaimed introvert status, I thought the best way for me to get into the conference was to go in and be a volunteer there. That would force me to have conversations with people, and also allow me the opportunity to meet some of the presenters, who otherwise I felt like I'd never get the opportunity to talk to. So I signed up as an ambassador to help with the audio-visual elements of the conference. That means I was helping set up the rooms and run them during the course of the conference. I immediately met 2 great guys at that conference who I was working with. They were both steady pros in the industry, and we all got along great. I also felt really appreciated over the course of the conference because, from my understanding, it had kind of just been the 2 of them for the last couple of years. So they appreciated any help they could get. And being able to run the AV equipment on site also put me in direct contact with the executive producer of the conference. Gerald Griffith is a man with a vision, and he definitely knows how to put on a show. And Gerald knew he needed help. Everyone involved as a staff member for his conference all lived out of the area. I literally lived in the town he lived in. Every year the conference had gotten bigger and bigger, which means every year he needed more and more equipment. So as he acquired more equipment, he also decided that he needed somebody to keep an eye on it. That somebody ended up being me. Now the question you may be asking is, why me? Well, best I can guess, it started with my application process to be a volunteer at the conference. I had to fill out all my previous experience as to why I would fit in that particular role. So as part of my working experience, I included my time at working at Double C, which caught the eye of the person who was reading over and interviewing everyone for these positions. He recognized immediately that I wasn't afraid to work hard, and I also had the experience of working in a warehouse and inventory environment. So that was step 1. Step 2 of how I got the position of asset manager for VO Atlanta is during the course of that conference, I worked my butt off. I don't remember the last time that I worked as hard as I did during that conference. And it was for long hours. I put in way more time than I was required to. I did it because I enjoyed the work. I enjoyed being helpful and really feeling like I was making a difference to the team. And I felt really appreciated in the process. So I really didn't look at it like I was doing anything more than I needed to. I was doing what I thought was right, which brought me directly in line with the position that he was looking to fill. So I took it. So not only was I starting a voiceover business, I was now in charge with the inventory of the largest voiceover conference in the world. And I was pretty happy about it. Even after several years in a pandemic, I'm still in that role. So now we've made it to today, where I've recently launched a podcast and now have 8 total episodes. Like voiceover, I feel like podcasting is an extension of my newsroom career and helping me sort of achieve the goals that I never got around to. But I'm also doing it to help me with my voice acting career. I'm really trying to nail down what people in my industry call a conversational read. And what does that mean? Well, it means something different to everyone. But the gist of it is, when you're reading something for a commercial or online training module or anything really, they want you to sound like you're having a conversation with the person on the other side of the microphone, which can be difficult when it's typically just you sitting in your padded room all by yourself all day. The one key difference, though, in this podcast from my voiceover career is that it's completely unscripted. Now, does that mean that I have no idea what I'm going to talk about for these episodes? Absolutely not. With this particular series, I laid out all the different jobs that I had, and then just kind of picked a couple of ideas that I felt like that I learned from each of those positions. I didn't script anything out though. They were literally just notes. So everything you've heard in every episode I've got so far is me just sort of kind of talking off the top of my head. Whereas in my voiceover career, everything is scripted. And it's really easy to get lost in the minutia of the script, from the standpoint of looking at every individual word and thinking about how you're going to say it. And if you think about it too long, steam starts coming out of your ears and you get nowhere. So I didn't want to do that with this podcast. I just sort of wanted to come up with a topic and then just kind of see what happens. And I hope you've enjoyed it. And I'm nowhere close to being done with it yet. I'm excited to announce that in Season 2, I'm expanding the platform of this podcast. While this may be the last episode of the Mountaintop Moments series, it's time to open up the floodgates of what we can talk about. So in Season 2 that starts next week, you're going to be hearing from some of my favorite people I've ever met. They've all got incredible stories to tell, which gets me super excited because that's what I want to do. I want to tell people stories because everybody has one, and everybody has something to teach, and everybody has something to learn. So as I always say, be sure to stick around for the next episode of this podcast. If you'd like to learn more about what I do, shoot me an email at steven@stevengeorgevo.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.